So they're kind of the promoter, but not the promoter, but also the regulator. It gets very mucky on what's what's exactly happening. And then at a certain point, if that's the case, then they need to take responsibility for the state of boxing. You literally have been running it for how many years, and it is where it is, because of the people that are running it. On the point of Leroy is that, he's been there a long time, and he should just be coming to the fights as an honorary guest and enjoying the fights and watching the fights instead of being involved. In regards to the talent and the fighters being frustrated, I get it. My very first flight down there, I met with Bomber and said, I'm here to help. I don't know if I just voiced my opinion a couple times too many to point out some things that needed to be changed, and they regulate everything across the country. So it's they're the amateur association, they're the professional sanctioning body, and there's no real rules per se on how much things cost. It's unfortunate that it has to be the way it is. The board kind of controls all of the sponsorship money and kind of is the ears to the sponsors. The amount of talent down there and lost potential I've seen in the last 10 years is it's devastating.
All right. Hey, welcome back to the conversation. It's Champions and Legends, the podcast with me, Courtney Wallace. And, this boxing conversation just keeps going and going and going. And like I said before, it's obvious that there's a lot of energy that's right now behind boxing in Jamaica. And that energy is just waiting to be released. Now, today's guest is somebody who knows a lot about Jamaica boxing, who has been involved in Jamaica boxing. Matter of fact, he has two fighters that's on in his stable, so to speak. And we're looking forward to big things from his promotions company. So let's jump right into it and welcome Mr. Tyler Buxton. Ladies and gentlemen, introducing, standing in the middle of the ring, Mr. Tyler Buxton. What's up, Tyler?
Not much. How you doing? Good intro.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've done that.
Yeah.
But man, thanks for taking time out to join us, and thanks for being a part of the conversation. I know you've been watching the conversation, and you've heard the various sentiments that has been expressed, and we just want to say thanks to you for adding your voice to it, because all we're trying to do here is to get the sport of boxing in Jamaica beyond even a level where it's been before. Because I remember back in the day, boxing was real big in Jamaica. Then it just seems to do this ebb and flow type of thing, and I think it's kind of in an ebb right now. We're trying to get the flow, get it back up.
Yeah, I think that's something that everyone that's been voicing their opinion that has a love for the sport, or who's involved with the sport. They want it to grow and they want it to get better, and some people are frustrated for where it's at, and they see the potential and see the athletes that are not maybe getting the platform or the exposure and getting the fights that they need, and missing out on opportunities. So I get the frustration on all levels, and
right. No, before we get into it though, Tyler, let me share with you real quickly that there's a particular gentleman, I met him a long time ago from soccer, from football circles. He was a coach. Met him way back when, and then when I was heavily involved in boxing back in the day, he reached out to me, and every evening about this time, I'd be in his gym. We'd be talking boxing. He started as the initiative he called Corner League Boxing, because of course, sometimes the funds to do boxing on a big scale is just not there. So he found a way just to get involved in the sport, and he eventually got real deep. I know at one point he was big in the Contender as a coach, cutman, ring, cornerman, all of that. And then, of course, there was the association with yourself, and you gave him the opportunity to come to Canada, go to Canada where you are, and he was a part of your team there. Of course, we're speaking of none other than Mr. Joseph Harrison. We call him Porter Reed. I've asked him where the nickname come from. He couldn't tell me where the nickname is from, but we just call him Porter Reed. Very likable guy. I really love spending time with him. Give me your impressions of Mr. Harrison.
Yeah, I always called him Coach Harrison. I think he was one of the first gentlemen that I met when I was involved with the Contender in 2017 when I came down. Introduced himself, and we just kind of hit it off, and you could see the passion he had for the sport, and not only just the sport, but also just helping the kids, like you said, from some of the rougher communities and trying to give back. He's a guy that really gave everything to the sport. So when I was able to try to bring some fighters to Canada to give them some opportunity to get some fights and get some matches in, he was able to help me match and bring them up. And then, he always loved Canada and wanted to spend some more time and wanted to help coach and get more involved up here, and kind of always had an ear to the ground in Jamaica, and we became good friends. So it was
yeah,
it was sad for sure.
Right. And of course, for those of you who don't know, we're reflecting on his life because he recently passed, and obviously a loss of the sport. And like I say, a man who, when I met him, he was heavily involved in football or soccer, and that was his passion. Then he just developed a passion for boxing, which I think was there, Tyler, because his father was involved in I think wrestling, bodybuilding, I think some boxing back in the day. So like his gym, heavy metal gym, a lot of, when you went there, you could tell why it was called heavy metal. One time I told him, we could almost call this rusty metal, because everything that was there was from his father. He inherited from his father, and he kept it going. It was a great place to work out. I used to work out there, so he will definitely be sorely missed, and we say condolences to all those who grieve his passing.
I was fortunate enough to make it to his gym and to see the setup and his passion for the place and his dream of building it back to its glory day. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. And yeah, rest in peace to Coach Harrison for sure.
Yeah, and off when you go up the hill, off to the right there, where you have a little open area there. That's where he set up his little ring, a little makeshift ring.
Yeah, the ring was there. Yeah, it was there when I was there.
He called it corner league boxing, which I thought was a great idea. Because because of the way sport is set up in Jamaica. So may his soul R.I.P. and his legacy will continue. All right, now let's get into it now, Tyler. First of all, tell us, how did you get into boxing?
I got in boxing, kind of became a fan of boxing when I was a kid. There was an Olympian by the name of Sean O'Sullivan, who was a silver medalist at the 1988 Olympics. He was kind of doing a tour after he turned pro, and he came to the small town that I was from. They did a pro event, and they were doing workouts, open workouts every day at the restaurant, the sports restaurant every day. And my father took my brothers and I in there to watch him train and work out, and we got to see Sean O'Sullivan, the Canadian silver medalist, do his thing, and that kind of sparked my attention towards it. Was never really allowed to compete when we were kids, but when I was old enough to sign myself up to boxing, I was able to go, and it was kind of the Mickey Ward, Arturo Gatti trilogy that kind of got me back into really wanting to go to the gym and get involved. And there was just a lot of good amateurs from my area where I was from, about 2 hours east of Toronto, and they would always make the school announcements on Monday morning that so and so won this national and so won silver at this national. And I was always just kind of like, okay, well, when are you guys turning pro? And they just said that there was no platform to turn pro. So me kind of jokingly, I said, you know what, then I'll just move to Toronto then, and I'll learn how to be a boxing promoter. I'll be the next Don King, and I'll come back here and start doing shows for you guys, and we'll just make millions of dollars, and life will be good. So in a roundabout way, I moved to Toronto and still had that passion for boxing, and kept calling the boxing promoter at the time that was in Toronto doing shows, and just said I wanted to learn how to do it. I was like 21 years old, and I think I did my first show when I was 23. So, and I've been promoting ever since, of well over 100 events, and yeah.
Nice. And of course, you've been to Jamaica, and you have 2 boxers now listed on your list of boxers, you got the Big 12 and the Hitman. What is it that would have pulled you to Jamaica from a boxing perspective? How did that come about?
Actually, my wife's Jamaican. So my wife moved to Canada when she was a child, and we were dating at the time, and I wanted to go meet her family and stuff, and we flew down, and I just said, like, what's going on, and kind of jumped on the internet, like, is there any boxing events going on, and what's happening down there, because of the long history between like Canada and Jamaica for boxing goes back, Lennox Lewis and Trevor Berbick, and the list goes on and on. And that's kind of was my first introduction, and I believe I met with I was reached out to Bomber and wanted to meet with him to see if there's anything I could do to help it grow. And we were talking about the Contender Series was on at that time, I believe 2015, 2016, and I just was mentioning to him that you're just recycling your own guys, and in boxing, their records matter. You need to build kids in order to give them a good record to go internationally to get paid. Guys that are 5-5 are not going to make a good living. And the problem with starting with 16 guys, all from the same country, only one guy leaves undefeated. Everybody else has a loss on their record. So early on, you're putting guys against like Sakima Mullins and Kamal Russell and stuff so early in their career that they're just not, they don't have a chance. So I mentioned to Bomber that, why don't I bring down a mixture of Canadian guys next year? You guys just do 8 Jamaicans, and then that way it's not just regurgitating the same Jamaican guys. And so for 2017 and 2018, I brought down the Canadian team to try to offset it and give it a new look and stuff. So that was kind of my introduction to the boxing down there, and that's when I started meeting all the different players and all the people involved, and started learning some of the politics of it all and the landscape, and was able to sign Ricardo Brown, and Jerome Ennis is also signed under contract, Kamal Russell. So I've been able to sign some kids to try and help them, but also I've been able to bring up guys like Richard Frog Holmes to Canada several times to get a couple of fights, and a couple other guys that I've brought up over the years that I've been able to try and get them some paydays to help out financially. So,
right. Well, it would be remiss of me for you to have mentioned the link between Jamaica and Canada as far as boxing is concerned, and then you reeled off Lennox Lewis, Trevor Berbick. It would be remiss of me not to mention the Grant brothers,
right?
Otis and Howard.
Otis and Howard. Yeah.
My first trip to Canada was because of the Grant brothers when Otis was making a comeback. I think he was fighting middleweights at the time after his bad accident. So
car accident.
Yeah, just want to send a shout out to the Grant brothers.
Otis and Howard are going to be calling me, giving me problems for not mentioning them for sure. But good friends with both of those guys too, and we get together for some dominoes every once in a while. So
nice. Yeah, those are great, upstanding guys.
Very good guys. Yeah.
I remember when Otis was inducted into the Hall of Fame. We're very happy for him because we know all that he had been through. Like I said, they're just great people. So you're always happy to see great people get their flowers when they're still around.
For sure.
Yeah. So let's talk about Big 12. What's happening with him? We know that his career got off to a great start, had some good wins. I think he's something like about 16-1, 12-1, something like that.
Yeah. One defeat. He's just he suffered an injury there in his last fight, so he's just getting back in camp and changing up his coaching team and trying to adjust some things now that he's seen the level that he has to get to. He knows that what's required to compete at the top 10 in the world, and he has to make some adjustments. So he's been working on that right now, and hopefully we can get him back in the ring before the end of the year.
Right. At 36 and in the glamour division, the heavyweight division, do you see him being able to, I don't want to say fast track because you sometimes don't want to use that kind of a language in boxing, but what do you see the future holding for him?
Yeah, you're kind of right. It's it is the heavyweight division. You do have a longer clock. It's not necessarily, your 30s aren't necessarily your clock's
Twilight
done.
years.
There's been years are done. There's been many heavyweights that have done well at 40 years old. So he does have some time, but yeah, we do need to make up for some lost time with the setback we've had lately, and he's got to make a statement. But to show that he fought Makhmudov then fought David Allen, and then he fought Tyson Fury. Literally 2 fights away. That's how close Ricardo was from life-changing money. So I think that we can get back there very quickly.
Yeah, but he also saw that he was a sparring partner for Usyk at one point in time before he won the title.
Yeah, he was in I forget, in Spain, I believe it was, and gave Usyk some hard rounds and got to see the level of competition and the type of sparring and exposure that he got over there. I think was a learning experience for him for sure.
Oh yeah, that has to be huge, man. You get to, because now you're rubbing shoulders with the upper echelon of the sport, which is always great because, like you said, it now gets into your mentals. You know what it takes to be up there, and even in a sparring session with these guys when they're getting ready for a world title fight, they're going to be hitting hard. So it's almost like you're the punching bag. So you have to be prepared, and it gives you a taste of a lot of guys will tell you that how they actually got there was, just becoming sparring partners with some of the top guys, and it kind of raised their level.
Yeah, guys like Larry Holmes and stuff kind of, made his way coming up as a sparring partner for Ali, I believe, and that's where he needs to be, and he knows that now, and he's big enough and strong enough to be there. It's just he needs to work on some of his technique and some of his foundation, and once we improve that, I think we can take that big step again. And he has a lot to prove, and I think he has that hunger still in him to see just how close he was to a Tyson Fury fight.
Wow. So what's the story now with Hitman? What's happening with Kamal?
Yeah, he's back, just getting his gym going. Same thing. He had a hand injury in his last fight, and it just seems to be one thing after another. But he is back training and wants to get back in the ring. Same thing before the end of the year. The problem with the Hitman is that he's probably one of the most feared middleweights in the world. I call certain matchmakers to get him fights in Europe and stuff, and they laugh and they say, not a chance. I would never put my guy against the Hitman. So it's becoming more and more difficult to match him and to try to get him on the big platforms. They know how dangerous he is, and that's kind of the issue we have right now with trying to get him going. And, he does want to fight in Jamaica before his career is over, and that's something that I told him I'd help him do. So maybe it's a comeback fight in Jamaica first before we go internationally, but we're just kind of working on that right now.
All right. 18-1 with 16 knockouts. That's nothing to play with. So he has one of them problems where on one hand it's a good problem, but on the other hand, it's a problem that hurts you. But nevertheless, still a good place to be, because at some point in time, one of the things about boxing, you can ignore talent for so long and no longer, because after a while, what you've seen it so many times when boxers become champions, and then your championship your credential become questionable because, hey, you skipped this guy all along. So at some point in time, I'm sure his opportunity will come. He just needs to stay ready.
Stay ready and stay healthy, and I think we'll get an opportunity.
All right. Now, you just mentioned that he wants to fight in Jamaica. I know that there were plans afoot for Big 12 to fight in Jamaica. How has that been? How has that process been? I mean, I guess that now takes us into your interactions with the board, and you've seen the conversation. And for as long as I've been involved with Jamaican boxing, even before, there was always just harsh criticism about the board and how the board goes about doing things. I have promoters call me all the time that it's very discouraging trying to work with the board, which when you speak to the president and the Gen Sec, it's a whole different story. Tell us about your interaction with the board.
Yeah, I think that's a fair fair statement from across the board that it's been very confusing over the years on who to talk to and what's the structure of it all and how does it work if I'm doing one fight or 6 fights or I just don't think it's completely structured 100% so that it's cut and dry and everyone knows what is going on because they regulate everything across the country. So it's they're the amateur association, they're the professional sanctioning body, and there's no real rules per se on how much things cost and a website you can just click on and you know exactly how things are going to work and and such and such. And I know that they try to help people out because of the situation down there that you know it's not ticket heavy that's going to push the gate to bring in big fights like you know a Kamal versus somebody or a Big 12 versus somebody to do big title fights. It's unfortunate that it has to be the way it is, but it has to be sponsored. And the way it's been structured so many years down there is that the board kind of controls all of the sponsorship money and kind of is the ears to the sponsors, and they don't really have promoters down there that are promoting shows regularly and building the platform without the backing of you know money that's gone through the hands of the commission really.
Yeah. So on this whole issue, this has been a long standing debate as to whether there should be separation, which we know there was a time when AIBA was around when they are mandated that there had to be separation, amateur and professional, because we understand, I mean, if you understand boxing, you know how both of those work. They're just two different animals, really. So tell us about, give me your impression on one body governing both ends of the sport.
Yeah, I don't know any other sport that does that. Like it definitely doesn't happen in the majority of the countries. Like you know, in Canada, there's a sanctioning body for amateur boxing across the country, but then each individual province also has their own sanctioning body, which is equivalent to, you know, each parish having their own sanctioning body. So there's multiple amateur sanctioning bodies across Canada, which all, you know, go to the amateur Canadian body, completely separate from professional boxing. Then each province has a professional sanctioning body. So the amount of control that one person's going to have over Canadian boxing is very minimal. If you're stuck under Boxing Ontario and then Boxing Canada won't get you international fights, you can leave and turn pro and you're not dealing with any of those people ever again. So there's no politics, there's no bad blood that can carry over from your amateur career to your pro career and hold you back. So in such a small country like Jamaica, to have just one sanctioning body trying to do everything, it's difficult. I don't know how to make it any better other than to split it up. Like it's but at the same time there's not enough resources probably there to make it flow. But when people are focused on amateur boxing, but then you're also focused on professional boxing, it's like you're not really focused on anything. You know, you're kind of half in and half out on both sports. And you know, athletes that can compete and get to the Olympics need people that are focused on them, focused on their training, focused on their coaching, focused on their tournaments. Like who's building amateur boxing specifically, and then who's building professional boxing or governing professional boxing and trying to increase that. I find that it's maybe not enough people on the board trying to wear too many hats, and it would probably benefit them if it was split, but I don't know how the legislation is written and how the funding is written and all that kind of stuff. But unfortunately, it's a lot of work for somebody or one board to try and actually build it to properly to have a platform. The amount of talent down there and lost potential I've seen in the last 10 years is it's devastating.
So am I hearing you saying then that the criticisms of the board are justified and well placed?
I wouldn't say all of them, and I don't even know if it's, to be honest, I haven't listened to every single interview and every single criticism to pinpoint. Like, I'm not going to agree with a blanket statement saying that it's, completely their fault or whatever. But at the end of the day, they are the board, and they control the destiny of what happens, especially for amateur boxing. On the pro side, they need promoters to come in and do events, and in order to build it. But it's difficult when you don't know what the landscape is with these commission and what it's going to cost me and how things are going to work and what are the rules and what is the cost? How do I do a budget for a series or a show? In October, and it could be 7 fights, it could be 6 fights, but how do I find out? It could be 4 rounders, it could be 10 rounders. It's not laid out on like a website or anywhere where you can find this information. It's kind of you're emailing people, and this guy's talking to that guy, and it's like, okay, it kind of depends on who it is, because they're trying to make money, but then they also want the shows to go. But it's just difficult to have a serious conversation with sponsors when you don't know how to budget the event accordingly. Like, is it going to cost me $1,000? But then if I get Ray and Nephew, it's going to cost me $10,000. Like, I need to know what is the cost of doing business, and that's just difficult the way that things are structured right now.
But and that's what I meant when I said the criticism, because and I'm sure you're speaking from your experience, that sounds like confusion. And if there is confusion, then there's going to be just about every kind of criticism that is possible. Because one thing you mentioned was the communication thing. I've heard that over and over, that one, communication is either lacking. You don't know who to talk to, right? Or you might send an email or try to communicate. It takes forever for it to get back. But also, it would seem that everybody goes to one person for expertise on how it is done. And like you said, it's you really can't serve two masters. And like you agreed with me before, professional boxing and amateur boxing are just two different beasts that should be kept in different cages.
100%. There should be a schedule for amateur boxing where the kids know there's a tournament, on the west side of the island in Montego Bay or Hanover or something like that every spring, and that's the rookie tournament, so kids can learn and get experience. And then the nationals are whatever every October in Kingston. Someone focused just on amateur boxing, trying to set up tournaments and events just to get the kids experience, so that when they go internationally, they're being beat because they don't have the experience, not because they don't have the talent. They have the talent. The kids, there's real athletes down there. You guys in Jamaica have excelled at every sport you guys get involved with the right funding and the right backing and the right exposure. Boxing's there too, with the right coaching and the right exposure and the right opportunity. You guys should be producing way more champions than what you have. I think Ricardo was the last one that went to the Olympics, and that was a COVID year,
But you also mentioned a lack of promoters. But if let's think back to what you just said about what seems to be disarray in how the board is run, where you can't budget. I mean, boxing, no matter where you are, is already going to be a difficult sport to put together in the best setups there are in the world, administratively and otherwise. It's always going to be difficult, like with most things, especially if you're doing this to make back your money. It's always going to be tough. But then if you think about somebody who doesn't have the Tyler Buxton experience, but wants to get into promoting fights, promoting events, then that you just described would not be the perfect breeding ground for such a person. You can't get into something so tedious with so much confusion and so many things not being as clear as it should be. So then, of course, then you're not going to have any promoters.
Right. And any businessman that starts looking at it and you can't, get a budget together properly because you don't know what things are going to cost, and you can't get straight answers. No businessman in his right mind is going to go down that adventure and start doing events like that. And then it's also hard to get sponsorship when you can't give them a straight answer. And that's why I guess the sponsors go to the boards, because the boards give them the answers. So but it hasn't worked because it's a conflict that if like one rum is sponsoring the board in the entire country, then all of the other promoters, it's kind of a conflict if they go get a different rum and try to get them to sponsor, right? And you've seen that for years, and it's kind of a different dynamic when they're running the pro boxing, also bringing in the pro funding. So they're kind of the promoter, but not the promoter, but also the regulator. It gets very mucky on what's what's exactly happening. And then at a certain point, if that's the case, then they need to take responsibility for the state of boxing. You literally have been running it for how many years, and it is where it is, because of the people that are running it. And it's unfortunate that it's in the state that it's in, but hopefully guys like Sakima and Kamal and all the other young fighters, or the guys that are getting out of the game, guys like Richard Holmes and stuff, that they can stay involved in the sport and help the amateur kids, and hopefully in time they'll build a platform. I started boxing promoting in 2008, and Ontario Commission was horrendous. It was one of the worst commissions to deal with in the world, and I just knew that over time that they will retire, they will move on, and just be ready that someday the commission will change and things hopefully change for the better. And I was lucky to possibly get 3 shows off a year in Ontario, and now I can do 9 a year with the new commission, and it's much more event friendly and working to build boxing and give platforms to the fighters, and really working with guys to make it make sense. And one of the big changes that the new commission did when they came in was they changed all the legislation. They just redid it all, brought it up to speed, and said, here's the rules. Everyone knows what the rules are. They're actually, from 2003, not, 1975 or whatever rules they were using before. So it was a big change that happened here in Ontario that really changed the landscape of boxing here in Toronto.
That's an interesting point, because you've heard it said before that kind of the man who's the brain of boxing in Jamaica, he's now 90 years old. He's been involved in the sport for 60 years. And the question always has to be asked, well, what new innovations would he have ushered in? Can he usher in? Can he relate to changing times? We're in a different era, and that has been one of the biggest talking points, that there has to be. I mean, even on your computer, there are times when you have to refresh that browser, right? Because there are constant updates. And we don't know that those updates are coming, because, again, some of the criticisms that, I take you, for example, I would say, despite 10 years, you are young, you're new to the scene, because I used to speak to people who would have been on the scene from in the 70s, when the Sunshine Showdown, and when Burbick and McCallum and Brown and all these guys were reigning, when you had dinner boxing shows, Thursday night at the fight, and all those things happened back in the, I'd say that was 80s, 70s, 80s into the 90s, I think it was. And you just keep hearing the same things over and over and over again. And you did mention about the talent pool that we have in Jamaica. We tend to have this tendency where whatever we touch, we turn to gold. We have a long history, a rich history in boxing. But the longer it is for reforms and change to take place, then you know, a lot of the talent goes to waste, because you just mentioned, people like Sakima, the Frog Holmes, and all these people know to come back and give back to the sport. But I tell you what I'm hearing from a lot of these guys, they don't feel like they were able to matriculate and self-actualize in the sport as fighters. And that is why some of them are just so bitter, and they just always, just really just bashing the board.
Yeah, I see that. I see that. And, on the point of Leroy is that, he's been there a long time, and he deserves his flowers for what he's done for all those years. But he needs to be given his knowledge to the next generation, and someone should have been getting trained over the last 10 years. And he should be trying to teach them to take over his role. And he should just be coming to the fights as an honorary guest, and enjoying the fights and watching the fights instead of being involved. But in regards to the talent and the fighters being frustrated, I get it, because there's been many fighters, even just since I've been coming there for 10 years, that handful of pro fights, and then they just get fed up and they don't do it, or they don't want to be involved, and that's unfortunate. But those are the guys that have the knowledge that can be passing it down. There's a lot of YouTube boxing coaches type of thing right now, where you watch a couple of pad videos, and next thing you know, they're in the gym holding pads and doing little routines and stuff. But that's not what the elite kids need, and guys like Sakima and Kamal and Frog and all these other guys, Tetsu Davis, all these guys. There's so many of them that have the experience, that have traveled international, and could pass on that knowledge. It's unfortunate that they're not more involved, and that there isn't a platform that supports them.
But there you go again. I mean, how can you get involved, like you said, if there's no platform, if there's no the setup is not where it then utilizes their experience and whatever knowledge they would have gained. As we speak about that, we see now where I know that Bomber Jones has for a long time been pushing for boxing in schools. Great idea, if you ask me. But again, this is now, I mean, if you think about schools competition in Jamaica, we have so many high schools, right? If 20% of the high schools in Jamaica decide to get involved in boxing, we do not have enough coaches and trainers to fill that. And here now is where the boxers would be. That's where you could actually use their experience to help out in that regard.
Yeah. I heard that's they're kind of running a pilot project or something like that. That it could be something great that could actually rejuvenate it all, and to the schools from each area hire a boxing coach that someone that's been involved with the sport, and they coach the local team. That could be something. And they have the property. I know I've been to GC Foster's facility, and it's phenomenal too. So can a bunch of schools across Jamaica build gymnasiums and have rings and actually have the sport available to the kids? Then it could be great. But then is it on the amateur body to start setting up tournaments or events, or is it on the schools that need to start doing that? What is the what's the structure there?
Yeah, indeed. It's going to take some work. But am I hearing you saying that you're one who is willing to put your hand up and do what you can to help the sport?
Yeah. My very first flight down there, I met with Bomber. I said, I'm here to help. I have a resume, some knowledge of how things can work and how things have been successful, and could probably be an asset. And it worked for the first 2 years of the Contender, 2017, 2018, and I don't know if I just voiced my opinion a couple times too many to point out some things that needed to be changed, and it wasn't appreciated, I guess. But definitely my goal is to help. I have so many friends and family down there now too, that, you know, if we could do regular events in Jamaica, that would be phenomenal. I would really like that. I think that there's tons of opportunity, even with all the tourism, Canadians and Americans flying down, also get to watch a boxing show and also get to get away from the snow. I think there's some elements there that people would really enjoy. And then I also think that there's, like I said, a lot of untapped talent that needs to be, given the chance. And I've always been able to, try to help whatever I can, like Coach Harrison calling and all the other guys calling. I try to do what I can, try to help out when I can. And anytime there's a young prospect that wants to come to Canada to fight, or that I can try to sign and help out, I do. But it would be much more beneficial if there's a platform down there where we can build the careers down there and get them to fight regularly. It's just not structured yet.
Yeah. And yet, you mentioned something, and this is another thing I've heard that really, it perplexes me, that people don't seem to be open to criticism, even constructive criticism. You see if people see every criticism of as destructive, then how then can you build, move forward, ensure that you're correcting mistakes? Probably something was good 10 years ago, it's not good today.
Or good 40 years ago. That's not the same, things change, and it's not even that it's like you're trying to be, criticizing them or whatever. You're just trying to help out and make changes. Like, I know Sakim has been vocal for many years, and people didn't like it, but he's traveled the world a lot and has a lot of exposure too, and a lot of experience, and he's a sharp mind when it comes to the game and the sport, and he's trying to build it, and maybe hasn't gone about it always the right way, and maybe I said something that someone took the wrong way, but my intention was never that. My intention is to build boxing, and I made that kind of clear from day one when I met with the commission when I flew down there the very first time.
Yeah, but that's a part of growth, though. I mean, we sometimes we might even butt heads. We're in the fight business. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If you talk about at the pros, some guys will tell you I'm in the hurt business. But I was just explaining to some people, that's one of the great things about boxing and about sport, is that in competition we're trying to hurt each other, but not to permanently hurt you, just to hurt you to get the win. Because at the end of the day, I still want you to eat. I want to eat. It'd be great if we can eat at the same table. But here's the thing, though. There has to be provisions at the table for us to eat. So we can bump heads. We can, a jab, a barb here and there, around the house, whatever it is. But if it gets the job done and it gets the situation better for everybody and for the future, for the long term, because that's one of the things. You want to ensure that the conveyor belt, the pipeline, is set up and it keeps running, so we don't end up in this situation like, with the Contender. Some great years of the Contender, boxing was all the way up there. One of the questions that was always asked, well, what if this stops? Then what? And that's exactly what happened. The Contender stopped, and then boxing just went quiet.
Yeah, because there's no infrastructure, there's no platform there. It was just built around the next contender, and if you were the right weight, you were able to get in it, and that was the shows. But it's not, the amateur platform is not there. No one knows when the nationals are, or any tournaments are, or certain events. There's no real structure to it all. And then on the pro side, everyone's just waiting for the contender, because they're paying X and Y Z money, and it's the only show in town. But like you said, is that if the boxing as a whole gets built more people get involved, more people do better. So if the board, has an amateur body taking care of the amateurs, the more amateur stuff that gets involved, more coaches, more referees, more judges, more athletes, more tournaments, more fights, it grows, and that's better for the board and better for everyone involved with amateur boxing. And same thing on the pro side. The more shows, the more promoters that are there doing events, the more active the scene gets, the busier the commission gets, the busier the referees get, the more exposure their judges get, and then they can start traveling and get involved with sanctioning bodies and start traveling internationally and start working large fights, because they can show that they do, 10, 15 fights a year in their home country, and they have experience doing big fights. But unless everyone's working together to build it and not working against each other, it's going to take another 10 years. It doesn't seem to be gelling yet, and hopefully things change soon. But there's a disconnect for sure.
Yeah, but I'll tell you something. As you mentioned that, I remember back in the day, I took a boxer to a Golden Gloves tournament in New York, and when we went there, guys asked him, "Where are you from?" He said, "We said from Jamaica." They said, "Jamaica, New York." "No, Jamaica." And they paused. They looked at us and like, "So you guys have boxing in Jamaica?" I said to one of the guys, I said, "Well, why don't you just wait until he gets in the ring, and then you'll know if we have boxing in Jamaica." And he was that good that after a while nobody wanted to fight him, and people were like surprised. But as you were speaking just now, I was thinking, easy exchange program. You're up there in Canada. You have a stable of boxers. You need fights for your boxers. You need exposure for your boxers. There are so many other promoters, so many gyms across the diaspora who, every weekend these guys are going around and they're looking fights for their fighters. And I tried to explain to people the difference between Olympic style amateurism and professional amateurism, which there is definitely a difference, which Jamaica has not grasped it yet. But I'm telling them, people go around and they're always looking to fight. So if people know that there's good fighting happening in Jamaica, organized fighting, you mentioned tourism, a guy could easily, have some money, get some boxers and say, "Hey, let's head down for a showdown in Jamaica." And just there now, Jamaica as a boxing destination.
Yeah,
it becomes a thing, and that's all gonna go back to say, hey, the board is doing a good job. But again, if one, you can't criticize, you can't make comments, you can't make suggestions, and if we're still doing things the same old, then I guess you and I will be having this conversation, like you said, 10 years from now.
Yeah, hopefully not. Hopefully it's changed by then, and things can progress. But that's exactly what it is. It's the same people having the same conversations, and nothing's changing. It's what do they say, the definition of insanity, just going in the same circle and expecting different results. We can't sit back and wait for the contender to come along and fix everything and fund everything. It's figuring out ways to use the people in the community that are involved with boxing and bring them together and say, hey, what can we do? How can we, make this happen? I've been promoting boxing for 20 years. Do you think the board said, hey, any chance you would sponsor an amateur show or an amateur tournament, Tyler, to help us get the grassroots going? No. Don't reach out and say, hey, what are your thoughts, or how can you help? They just do their own thing, and it's unfortunate, but there's I don't know. I think there's a light at the end of the tunnel, and I think that there's some good people that are still down there that still want to build things. And I think that even the guys that were there have just been doing the best that they can, and I don't think that they have necessarily done a bad job. They've just done something they were able to do, or knew what to do, or how to do it, and just need to get maybe some boxing people involved with some new ideas, like you said, and try some new things on building boxing in Jamaica, and get that platform going, and get the amateurs completely separate, and get it organized, and have a plan where it's not just all in one big bowl of a mess.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned light at the end of the tunnel. I don't know if this is it, but I want to go back to something you said where Leroy Brown is concerned. And you were right. At his age, he really should be moving in an honorary capacity. More of a consultant where, like you said, you can give him his flowers while he's still here. he should be sitting back enjoying the accolades of his achievements in the sport. However, what I do know is that probably by the end of this month or pretty soon, he will be demitting office. He says he'll always be involved in boxing. So whether demitting office means, that when you put those two statements together, you really don't know what it means. But yeah, it would be great if Mr. Brown was to step aside and allow us to give him plaudits for 60 years of serving the sport and serving the country.
Yeah. He's done lots, but how much knowledge he has, who has he passed it on to, and the experience and hopefully that's not all lost when he finally steps away from the board. I don't know who else is on the board right now and what their backgrounds are, related to boxing per se. I know that there's, lawyers and certain people like that, but who has the boxing knowledge to know, a left hook from a fish hook, and that's something that, is important, that someone knows actually how things are set up and how things are run and what the rules are supposed to be. But maybe
like I said, fresh knowledge. Right. Maybe a knowledge from 30 years ago is not applicable now. So yeah, but Tyler, we can't. I'm trying not to be a Debbie Downer, and I don't want to be that person who is always, singing the negatives. But there's, like Marcus Garvey said, a man without knowledge of his past is like a tree without roots. So we have to have these discussions in order for us to move forward. We also have to have them as continuous as is necessary, until we see the kind of change we're looking for, at least some change. Not everything is going to work right away, but at least make some changes, make something happening. So, we'll keep the conversation going. Again, we're not trying to be just critical or have deconstructive criticism. We really want to be constructive, but at the end of the day, we want to see boxing moving. We want to sit back and see some good shows in Jamaica. I mean, the last big show was in Jamaica, I think might have been the World Championship fight with Nicholas Walters. That was 2012. Everything else has been, on a particular level. And I know it's not for a lack of effort on people like yourself, Sakima, and other people who have just tried. I mean, even Harrison, when he got fed up, he did corner league boxing. As dangerous as it might be, but at least something is happening. You know what I'm saying? It's a concept, something you can work with. So, we keep the conversation flowing. We're expecting big things from Big 12 and the Hitman. Hopefully the Hitman will get some good matches. And I'd personally would love to celebrate another Jamaican world champion.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned Walters, and there's a guy, a perfect example that had to make his career outside of Jamaica. And when he comes back, people don't really know who he was because he spent his whole career abroad fighting. So it's unfortunate that that fight wasn't better received than what it was. But hopefully that, like you said, Ricardo and Kamal and even Drone Ennis, he's a young kid that I signed as part of the JDF. He's a young prospect, still young, and has a bright future also. So always looking to help out and do what I can with the young kids out of Jamaica coming up. But if we could really do it in Jamaica, that would be great for everybody involved and great for Jamaica.
Yeah, but I tell you something I found out probably about 20 years ago. Matter of fact, right now I'm part of a forum of ex-boxers, and you can just hear the anger being spewed. And one of the biggest things is that a lot of boxers never got to showcase their talent on Jamaican soil in front of their family and friends who are not able to travel to see them fight. Because a lot of these boxers, not all of them make it up into the top 10, top 20s, or even there, or make it to, the big purse fights where they can say, hey, send some tickets for some family members to come over. Some just never get that opportunity, but they still would love to fight in front of their home crowd on home soil. It's like, it's a thing. And I know that That's something that pains a lot of boxers. You sit and you talk to them, and I mean, tears. I see tears come from boxers' eyes when they think of it, that they were never able to display their talent on home soil.
So. Yeah, and that was one of the things, signing Big 12 and signing Kamal and all of them. They want big fights. They want the world titles, and they want the money, and they want all that thing. But one thing that they all mention is fight at home.
Yeah,
they all want to fight at least once in Jamaica in front of their family and friends. It's something that all of them have said. None of them have ever said, like, I don't ever care if I fight here again. They've all said, like, I want to be a world champion, but I also want to fight at home. So
absolutely. Well, there's another thing we can agree on from experience. I can tell you. Matter of fact, when I used to work with a lot of these boxers, you think of the Owen Becks, and to this day, Owen Beck, having retired probably close to 10 years now, still wants to fight in Jamaica.
What the heck? It's Owen Beck.
What the heck, Owen Beck? Hey, can I tell you a story? I went with Owen to Germany. He was fighting Nikolai Valuev.
Valuev, yeah, nice.
And I was at the press conference. So at the end of the presser, Valuev was kind enough to allow us to take some pictures with him. But of course, with his height, he's up on the platform, I'm down below. So there's no way I can get my camera to take the picture. Can I tell you, that guy opened his paws, I can't even call those hands, and he held me on the shoulder, and he just went like this and pulled me right up to him for the picture. And then once I took the picture and I was satisfied, he just gently put me back down.
Wow. Oh, that's great. That's a cool experience for sure. Yeah, Owen's a nice guy too. But you're right. Everyone talked about wanting to fight in Jamaica, and doesn't matter where they go around the world. It is something that could be special for a lot of guys if we could get it structured and actually work together as a team and have one common goal and building the sport, not the conflict. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's absolutely. Well, you know what? If the boxers want to fight in Jamaica, I'm sure promoters also want to promote in Jamaica. So again, like I started the program, there's a lot of energy that I'm feeling right now on the ground. It's almost like it's like a volcano. It's boiling under there, and something's got to give. It's gonna blow. It's gonna blow. But we just hope that it will blow in the right way, and it will just be for the better of the sport.
Yeah, there's a lot of kids into boxing that are interested because of this YouTube stuff and the Jake Pauls and stuff. There's a new wave of generation of kids that want to get involved with boxing. Some of these kids probably weren't even around when the last Contender Series was on, but they're excited about boxing. So we don't need to wait for the next contender to come around. Let's get a platform going and get the fight nights going and let the talent rise to the top.
Indeed. Hey, Tyler, I want to say thanks to you, man, for taking the time out to speak to us. Please don't let this be the last conversation. I've been doing it for a while, just got back into it, and I said to everybody I speak to, my platform is here for boxing. Anything needs to be said, any support that needs to be given from a media, marketing, PR standpoint, I'm here. I love the sport. Through this sport, I've traveled the world. I've done, it has done a lot for me, just like it has done for a lot of the boxers. So I really want to see the sport grow. So, thanks again for your time, man. And let's keep the conversation going.
Yeah, I appreciate having me on. And any time I can help and give my input or give you an update on what's happening here in Canada, just reach out and give me a call. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, please. You have my number. So, anything, latest developments, especially with our Jamaican boxers, just shoot me a text, shoot me an email, whatever. I'm on it.
Appreciate it.
All right. All right, my brother. You take care.